Alright, so continuing our Moon Knight build for Fallout for Marvel Mondays. You can see I've gone ahead and applied our Apothecary White over our base. So that's our contrast Apothecary White, picking out all the details quite nicely there. So now, because we want that to not be so dingy, we're going to take some first day with a new mouth, Acryl Bold Titanium White. This stuff is really good. Also has an agitator in there. I've used this to paint white details, the Spider-Man eyes, for instance. And it is a very nice, super strong white. So there's two methods we could do to bring this back up to a pure white. One is we could just layer white on, leaving the dark sections where we think they should be. Or what I'm going to do is the easier method. I've never been one really good with layering, is just dry brush it on. So get that on there, and then we're just going to go ahead and we're going to do some practice swipes on the back here because that gets covered up by the cloak. So right there, you can already see the whites going on quite nicely. So we're just going to go ahead and do the whole model this way. Okay, so that won't take much to dry, but we're going to give it a couple seconds real quick. And while that's going on, I'm just going to apply some... Oh, actually, what I wanted to do first, we're going to use Aggros Dunes for our brickwork. But before we do that, so I've primed this in bone. So I'm going to take some gray cere and just paint some individual bricks here and there. Then when I apply the contrast over it, you'll have a nice kind of two-tone different brick effect. Alright, so while those brick basings are drying, we're going to take some of our Brassy brass here, and we're just going to pick out the detail work on his belt, and just give it a little bit of color, since otherwise it's going to be fairly monochromatic. Alright, now we're going to take our Aggros Dunes and just coat the bricks real quick. And we're going to work from top to bottom so that any streaking will just look to be water. Now, for those brass pieces, we want them to actually be gold. So what we're going to do is go over them with a nice Nazdreg contrast yellow, and it will really make them change. Alright, so you see it kind of gives it a nice old gold look. Like I said, we're just doing those couple pieces of gold to really break up the model a little bit. Alright, so next we're going to let the pillar dry. So that's a lot of Aggros to go ahead and dry there. And I'm going to work on attaching the cloak to the model itself. I'm going to have to go in where I did have it glued and kind of smooth that all out, and then glue it into the top, and also remove the paint so that the plastic itself is bonding, not the paint to paint. You always want to scrape away any paint where you're doing any of your gluing. So I will do that off camera and we'll be right back. Alright, so as we can see, it's all dried very nicely. Everything's looking pretty good. So what I'm actually going to do now is apply some ink, not for a sketch effect, but to kind of pick out certain pieces. So like I want to highlight the moon on the chest and also get the eyes. So I'm taking my thin brush, we're just going to load it up and apply some detail work. So as you can see, we've really blocked out the mask now, showing a lot of lines on there. So it really helps to break up the model, especially when it's so monochromatic. Just to kind of get those lines in there and really show off the detail that is there, but can be washed out when it's a monochromatic model like this. So next up, we're going to apply some basing material. So as far as this goes, for my Midnight Suns, my concept, it's important to have a concept to kind of tie armies or groups together, I think. But for this one, the concept is that they're fighting in a graveyard. Whoops, as I knock over everything. So what we want to do is take some texture paint. So we've got this Martian iron crust that I've used this previously for my Separatist army in Legion, since it has that reddish earth, so it very much the Battle for Geonosis type thing. I will not be using my good brushes for this because this has particulates. I don't want particulates in the bristles. So we're going to use my old good brush that was retired into terrain brush. It's been doing a good job of handling dirty down rust, etc. So what we're going to do is apply this to the base to give us some texture, and also to cover up the lines that are there to make it blend in with the other street bases. We will also be applying flock. So this is something new. We don't usually do this because of the Fallout miniatures having their own stuff. So this is just a little plan. You want this to be built up a bit. We will be applying Aggros Earthshade over this to give it some tone. Alright. You just see we're basically using the brush to not really paint it on, or spoon it on and then move it around. So I don't use my good brushes for this. Now, this will take a while to dry, so we're going to have to let it sit for a bit. While it does that, we're going to go ahead and do the top of the wall. So we're going to take that and do it in a gray. So we're just going to go ahead and use my gray that's hiding from me. There we are, Skavenblight Dirge. Nice medium gray. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and let that dry for a bit then. And we'll be back to finish up the flocking and the base. Okay, so our base material has dried, and I went over it with a wash to give it some shading. So now we're going to go ahead and attach our flock. First thing I do is put some water, and then I'm going to take my PVA glue and mix it in. I always start with water when I'm doing a base like this, simply because it needs to, you don't need it as thick as it comes, so it's just easier to take and mix it into the water. What we're looking to do is getting almost a watery paste. A little bit more here, because we want it watery enough to sink into the material, but still maintain its adhesive qualities. That should do it. Now, one of the important things when applying is you don't have to apply it all. You can leave some bare patches to represent, just some of the dirt poking up, dead grass in that area, that sort of thing. Now, I will be going heavy on the edges, because I do want the grass to be more built up there. Because if you've ever looked at a fence or a wall, the grass along the edges will tend to be stronger because you can't really clip it while that close in, and also it tends to benefit from shade and excess water coming down off whatever is growing next to. So then I'm just going to kind of patchwork it out from there, possibly leaving some bare spots. Front end here I'm just going to completely do. Immediately clean off the brush, and again, this is my well-used brush that I use for non-painting applications. And then what I have, and what I tend to do with all my flock, is have it in a Ziploc bag. And then all I'm going to do is just take it, pick it up, shake it off, and there. I'll now let that sit while the PVA dries, and then we'll be good to ring it and seal the base. So we'll be back with the finished model. Okay, as we can see, we're all done with Moon Knight. I think he came out great. We got that nice white on him, but still has all the shadowing that a rooftop Nightcrawler needs. Mask is nicely defined, as is the chest symbol, thanks to inking. For the base, you can see some of the patches of dirt showing through, which I think gives it a nice, more realistic. One important thing when working in flock, before using it on any models, I would take like a couple blanks as far as bases go. So like I've just got these I use for testing, and put them on one of both of them, and then seal one and compare it to the other. I've used this flock before, so I know it reacts well to sealing. But some stuff, similar to tufts, some why I don't seal tufts, can react badly. It can wind up turning it harsh and very brittle. But I like the way that this grain comes out. For the back of this, since the wall is supposed to be continuing on, I just painted it black. And I did the colorful base line I've been doing. So we're all set with him. I'm trying to decide which one to do next. I'm torn between Blade and Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider simply because he's nice and large, and well, Blade because he's Blade. So I'll get one to start one of those next, and we'll see how that comes out. But yes, really happy with the way this looks, and looking forward to the next one.